Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Anisa Tova, and today we've got a real treat for you. We're chatting with the legendary actor and comedian Tom Arnold. Now, you know him. He's the guy who had us laughing out loud in all sorts of roles from big screen to our favorite TV shows. But there is so much more to Tom than what we see on screen. And today we are going to dig a little deeper and get to know the real guy behind all the fame and fun. Tom, I'm super excited to have you here with us. Welcome.
Well, thank you. That sounds very. I'm sure people would be very disappointed when they dig in over here, but uh, I'm, uh, I'm honored to be out here with you. It's very nice to meet you, bud.
The beautiful thing about this is what I really appreciate, you are going into it completely blind and trusting because the essence of the podcast is really to get to know people and truly go beyond the bar, fames, and titles. So it's easy to read the headlines, but I'm interested in knowing the guy behind the headlines. And so I'll ask you a very open-ended question. What's your story, Tom?
Well, my story right now, I'm a 64-year-old single dad with an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and his father-daughter dance. I still got some of the nail polish on it. I have four ex-wives. I spent a lot of time in court, especially the last 7 years, because you get divorced and people get their feelings hurt and they say things, whatever, and then you move on. If it's about money, it's just money. There's a way to figure it out. I live in California, community property, bam, bam, bam. But then if you have kids in a divorce and somebody wants to, because people realize, oh, I know how to hurt that other person. I know what they care about the most. It's these kids. So you could be. It's been a quite a journey for me and my kids. 7 years worth of court, etc. And I'm very grateful. I'm grateful to that we have a smaller life than we started. We live in but it's worth it. I always wanted to be a father, and that came true later in life. And I want to raise my kids. It's that's when we first got divorced from my ex, my lawyer said, "What do you want?" I said, "Well, I want 50-50 custody." He's like, "No, no, no, no. Wait till they're like 7 or 8 and they're fun." Then I go, "I don't know where I'll be when they're 7 or 8. We're going to do it right
Mm.
now. That's how it's going to be." And I think that's very reasonable. And you know, here we are. Very grateful.
That is actually amazing that you put the interests of your children above your own because that is a tough process. I've been through it myself. And one thing, this was about 20 years ago, basically, there, my kid's dad and I, we grew into being friends, being respectful to one another, because at the end of the day, it is about kids. And it was interesting because our kids would say, "You know what, Mom? You guys were almost like more not functional. Like we have friends from intact families, and they argue so much, and the two of you actually, it didn't feel like you were divorced." So, it can happen, you're right, absolutely. It's not easy,
That
though.
it's not easy, but it's better to be in two happy households than one
Yeah.
unhappy household just for the sake of staying together for the kids or whatever. A lot people used to do that a lot. You know, um, most people do grow into that sort of co-parenting role where they decide they love their kids more than they hate the other person. But there are some people that and it's rare, but that just can't because that conflict, that's their thing. And if there's any way to make more conflict, or for instance, in our case, my ex has swatted us a bunch of times. That's where you call the police. You're like, okay, the guy's name is Tom. He's violent. He has a lot of guns. Go
Mm.
get him. And the police come in hot. The kids are always here, of course, when she does that. But and then you get to know the cops. And once it happens a bunch of times, they're like, "Dude, call us if you even think she's going to do this." So, I think you get if normal people, I would assume, if I were taken out of my house on Christmas by the police I'd called, and I'd go, okay, Uncle, that's it. Now I've learned, I'm moving on, but there are people that apparently don't move on. But it's I'm so grateful that I'm so close to my kids because sometimes in these situations with all the conflict, the kids, one parent's trying to get the kids away or alienate the other parent, and that can happen. That's a real thing, and I'm very
Yeah.
lucky that that hasn't happened.
That's a great point. You know what? On the topic of kids, how would your kids describe you?
Uh, my daughter, who's 8, would describe me in probably a better way. Like fun, talks too much sometimes, does everything with her. She'll say, I never say no to her. And if I get up, come home, she goes, Daddy, let's play. I go, okay, what are we playing with? A balloon? Okay, that's it. We're doing it. And, you learn to love those things. Uh, uh, you know, I love her. My son's, he's 10, but he thinks he's 16. And you say, what do you do with your dad? He's like, nothing. I mean, we do everything that you can, you know, but, you can feel his vibe. He digs it here. He does dig it here. Um, but it's the best thing, and they change so much. My thing is, I feel like the kids came here fully formed, and it's my job as a parent to protect them and to give them advice, but also figure out who they are in life and facilitate that for them. So anytime I projected and thought, oh, my son does this or he's going to say this because that's what I would have done, I've been wrong. You got to, there's a lot of listening and a lot of attention. And one of the big things, I'm kind of on the spectrum myself a little bit. And when we first, you have to be, kids need you to be omnipresent. They need, you know, and I remember I used to come home and I go in my office and get on my computer and go on all the internet and watch every sport thing, whatever. And then it'd be hours later. And one night I got home from a concert I hosted and feeling good about myself. And my babysitter went home, and I went in my office and thought I'd spend 5 minutes on the internet. And I'm going, and all of a sudden beside me, I see my daughter. She's 18 months. And she says, Daddy, come to bed. And she'd gotten from upstairs, and there's a gate at the top of the stairs. She got out of bed, got through that gate, walked all the way downstairs into my office, and I looked at her and I said, "Honey, you got to get back up there. I'll be up in 5 minutes." And then I kind of went back here, and then I realized, oh, she's still here. And I looked at her, and I realized, oh, she knows every lie I've ever told. Like she knew I was lying just then. I didn't know I was lying. But so
You're fun.
from that point on, if they're like, Daddy, can you help me with this? If I say 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes, and they put me on a timer, you know, and we time it. And the same goes for when they get home from school. I'll say, what about your homework? Give me 12 minutes, and then I'll do my homework. And so it works both ways. And I'm constantly learning and trying to figure out a way to be a better, person. And the kids are very helpful.
They do. They ground us. It's so humbling and they speak the truth. Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
um, I was curious. I mean, looking back at your acting career, if somebody was to actually portray you in a movie, do you know who would you want that person to be?
A couple people have. There's two movies about my first divorce, and it's a weird thing watching somebody uh, play you in a movie. It was a very strange feeling, and I think there were people in the movies I actually knew. Um, you know, I can't imagine who it would be. I know a long time ago a guy wanted to be my stunt double, my double, and he had $75,000 worth of makeup on his face. You can Google this. I was like, "Oh my god, that is crazy." It seems like you'd have $75,000 worth of plastic surgery to not look like me. But
Wow.
you know, I mean, I have, there's a documentary series about my sister called The Queen of Meth. My little sister was the biggest drug dealer in America. And people are like, was it embarrassing that your little sister was a drug dealer? And I'm like, not when I was doing drugs, it wasn't embarrassing. It was actually kind of handy. But to see they went into our childhood, a lot, and I participated in the documentary, and watching that is a weird, you know,
Mm,
watching yourself, kid, as this is happening, that this is what the life was like. That was a little, uh, seeing myself as myself is a little disconcerting. Um, I will say this: when I became a parent, I heard a lot of other parents at schools. A lot of people are that live your dreams, dream it, it can happen, whatever. And I remember thinking that's a lot to put on a kid.
mm.
And maybe if your dreams are a little bit half reasonable. And then I realized every dream that I've ever had has come true. I grew up on a farm. I worked in a meat packing plant on the kill floor for 3 years out of high school to save money to hopefully go to college, to become a comedian. The reason I wanted to become a comedian, I was raised by a single dad too, and
Mm.
worked in a factory. And the only time we ever heard him really laugh was when there was a Bob Hope special on. Bob Hope was a comedian that used to do these fantastic specials in the 60s and 70s, and he'd go to Vietnam or South Korea or Germany to entertain the troops, and he had pretty women. And that was my dad's kind of humor. And so I said, whatever Bob Hope does, that's what I'm going to do. One of the first things I did when I got to Hollywood was a Bob Hope special. And Bob Hope called my dad. He signed all this stuff for him. And so my dad, in the same living room, they used to watch Bob Hope when I was a kid, watch me and Bob Hope, his son and Bob Hope. And I thought, well, that's the magic. That's a pretty magical thing. Then I thought, well, what? Okay, I've done it. That's my goal. Now what do I do? That was like 1989. But it really is. And I can remember being, in the meatpacking plant, daydreaming. You know, daydream. I remember Mork and Mindy was on TV back then, the Rob Williams show, and I was
Yeah.
daydreaming. I was best friends with Robin Williams, and then then I get home and look at myself in the mirror like, you got to quit having that. That's it. That you'll never meet him. How would that even work? Whatever. And then about 10 years later, I was sitting in Rob Williams' house, and we're getting ready to start this movie, 9 months, and we're sitting there at dinner for all the actors, Hugh Grant, me, Julianne Moore, Jodie Cusack, Jeff Goldblum. But at the end of the dinner, I'm sitting across from him. I'm like, Robin, I have been here before. And he's like, what, in my house? I go, no, this, me, you, best friends. And he's like, Tom, we're not best
Wow.
friends. I know, but it's weirdly close to the way I imagined it. So, you know,
Wow.
uh,
Yeah.
things can happen. Things can happen.
Well, you didn't just dream it, you manifested it. That's, and
That
it
is, I think, not to sound like Oprah, but I have manifested a few. Uh,
yeah, that is Oprah-ish. Yeah.
yeah,
You know, I have a question. I mean, you're obviously pro at cracking jokes. Has being funny always been your secret weapon, since you were a kid and to help you deal through setbacks?
it's been helpful. I grew up at a time in a really working class town where uh, the older boys were just brutal, and I sort of had to wait. Me and my buddy had to walk a gauntlet on the way to school of the older boys on the block, and rough. They're rough. I mean, you learn how to fight, which is the good thing, and then eventually, that even if it takes till your last day of high school, you eventually get them back. Whatever, which is what happened. Like as we got bigger, they kind of stayed the same. But I think that dealing with that kind of stuff and what was your question?
If you use the laughter to help you overcome,
Yeah,
tough
and
situations.
yeah, and in our town there were some very specific bullies. There was a kid named Ammenhauser that everybody called Ammo. And he's guy, and
Yeah.
he was rough. And but I remember at one point I made him laugh. And then he's like, "You can ride the back of my truck," and the band, and then, well, but I thought that's a powerful thing. I like whatever that is. I like that. It seems like you get beat up a little less if you could do that. So I certainly wanted to pursue that, and you know, my thing was always if I get on TV one time, everybody in my hometown will like me, which turns out to be not true. But now I was always thinking, I'll get this, we'll get this thing under control here. I mean, you when you're a kid, and I've shared about, my lunatic mom would go drinking, and she was a drug addict and stuff before she left. But she made drug addicts and alcoholics make sloppy parents, and they
Mm.
make very bad choices. And she left me with this man in the neighborhood who was a pedophile. And you kind of when you go through that, as a kid, because you're totally confused what the hell is going on, but you do learn to disassociate, and you learn to imagine this other world, this other, just to get through it. And I found that to be a helpful thing. I also, when I got as an adult, I got sober. I went and found the guy. When my brothers tracked him down and went and confronted him. And he's a big religious guy, a big business owner. I found him and I confronted him, and I felt like, well, that's okay. That's complete. And 30 other boys came forward,
Really?
and uh, but I thought that's as my journey along to, deal with things and then move along, I thought that was pretty satisfactory. But I do remember as a kid sort of being in this other world where I would watch TV, and there'd be Walt Disney show. I could see myself there. I have no
Mm.
idea how that happens or what but when you deal with things like that, you do learn to have sort of a fantasy world, and sometimes those fantasies all come true. So you got to deal with stuff.
What a resilience. I can relate to a lot of what you're talking about in terms of I wasn't born in the US. I actually came here from another country when I was a teenager all by myself. So I've been
Where
through Czech
where are you from?
Republic,
Oh
Czech Re
yeah, yeah,
Prague. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And and I know damn a lot about losses. I lost my son 2 years ago. He was in the service, and, it's but you learn, I have a daughter and a granddaughter, and you stay in the present moment, and you just have to feel the feelings and learn to deal with it, whatever it is. Um, so, I'm just wondering, you have been through so much and you're constantly I would imagine you're in a spotlight a lot. How do you deal with all this publicity and then being able to stay true to yourself?
Well, the thing about having kids, it puts a lot of the real world right there, the real world. And I think the fact that I get so much self-esteem out of being a dad. There was a time in my life where that other stuff, you know, and especially my first marriage, we were so famous and so much stuff going, fighting with the paparazzi, doing all these things, and people try to, do things. I think that was sort of my initiation into Hollywood, was just
Mhm.
bam, this big relationship, this thing, this big show. Um, People, when you've been famous for a long time, when people have known who you were for 35 or 40 years, it just becomes, I mean, you're grateful because but you just got to kind of, when I go, kids and I go places, and, people are very nice and come up and say stuff. And I think sometimes, especially my daughter, she's not, she doesn't want to share me, but you learn to adapt. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Really nice to meet you. You're good. And then you move on. If someone gives you something to sign, you sign it quick, you move on. Whenever I go to the airport, there's people that somehow know that I'm coming to the airport. And I am grateful about these phones because they used to have to pull out a camera, and now they can do the selfies. And it's just easier to say
Yeah.
yes to each thing and keep moving. Literally keep your body moving. Don't stop. And because once you stop, it's over. So, um, you know, there are, I try to keep, I got a good, if you're in Hollywood long enough, you've been humbled a lot.
Mm.
And it's kind of funny. It's, if you can find the humor in the ups and downs of your life or your career, which, I could definitely do that. So I never assume things, but I also don't miss the people outside of the house. Now, once in a while, my kids get followed, and it's if their mom has filed something, because she'll file something with the court and leak it to this tabloid thing, and then we'll be in the store and there'll be people filming. I'm like, oh, your mom must have filed something. Okay, uh, um, and let me just give you an example of something that of her 12 or 15. She accused me of kidnapping kids because I took them to my stepmother's funeral, who's their grandmother. And my stepmother's married to my dad for 50 years, really the only mother I've ever known. And it's madness. It's madness. And I think though, when someone does stuff that often, then
Mm.
eventually, this next month when I go back in court about the kidnapping, that the judge, because you can tell they don't want, it's anything that causes conflict for the kids. They don't like it. So I think when people can do things that are so overt, well, call the police or say accuse me of kidnapping my kids, take them to a funeral. That eventually, and hopefully it'll be this time, that the legal abuse part, because people can always go, well, that's a high conflict divorce, but it's not, because I filed for divorce, but I've never filed all this other stuff or called the cops or whatever. So I think hopefully this next time it might be the last, but you never know. You can't control people. People are going to do
No,
what they're
no,
going to do. So
no,
um,
that's true.
and
So
you
true.
just protect as best you can. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. I know you can't control people because we all come from, our different backgrounds, different preferences, and it's really if the point of conflict, I think, is in trying to get the others to agree to the way I see the world, and we just see things differently. So in my world, it's okay to say, this is just sort of my stuff, and this is your stuff. I think there's a lot of, with the social media, your life is out there, our kids are on it. And in my mind, it's having good conversation with the kids rather than trying to protect them from from social
Me,
media. What is your view on that? I mean, you have young kids.
it's an opportunity to parent. Uh, uh,
Yeah.
the kids are on social media. I mean, I have some control of what you know, and
Right.
uh,
Now.
and if I ever care about something, I'll say, "Give me your phone, open it up," and I'll look at everything right in front of them and say, "Well, here's what I think." Like my daughter, when she was 7, she is very smart with technology. My son is too. I am not. She signed herself up for an Instagram account, and
Wow.
the mom there, "Oh, I'm gonna have to complete zeros." I go, "She could have done that." Then I got her phone, and she had, and it was public, so I just made it private. Now it's her girlfriend's, but, you know, that kind of stuff happens,
Yeah.
and then we talk about it. And, like, we listen to kids like, TikTok, radio, satellite radio, and we'll be driving to school, and then I'll hear songs because they say all the words, these people. And every time there's been like the N word, you hear it in so, and then I stop. I go, okay, here's the thing. There's a lot of things you could say, but that's the number one you cannot say. And I'll tell you why. And I tell them why. I'll tell them. I'll tell about history. I'll tell about this, that. And even if my son, all of his buddies, second, he's in fourth grade, all their gamer handles they do Fortnite is
Yeah.
something 60. And the guys they admire, these older guys, are something 69. And so we're driving to school the other day, and I said, "Son, do you know what 69 is?" He's like, "No." I go, it's a sexual thing. And he's like, "Oh my God, that's good." I go, "You want me to explain it?" He's like, "No." My daughter, he did. "Yeah, I do." I go, "Okay, honey." It's like this. People are in
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
They both are, they take their clothes off. One stands on their head. I mean, that's about as far as I get. And, like, discussing, I go, well, that's the thing. I just, so when you write that 69 thing,
Yeah.
it's a reference to this thing that grosses you out, a relationship thing. So, I do the best to inform them. And again, the stuff they see from their mom is bananas. So that they've seen a lot of things. But I do the social media. My daughter creates little videos, and
Mhm.
it's very creative, and I'll be watching her, and she'll be kind of doing this thing, dancing or doing it, and then she'll edit it, and I'm like, well, that's very, number one, I'm in the entertainment business, so I want them to learn a little bit about it. But it's also the skills that they're developing,
Yeah.
and so I mean, social media. I don't. There are people like it's the devil, but it's also this great opportunity where I mean, you could I could be talking to you on social media. That would never
Yeah.
happen. And my son plays Fortnite with kids in Israel, and they do weird hours and all over the world. And I hear them shit talking to each other. And I'm like, you guys, And my
Yeah.
son will do
Yeah.
this. I'll come in the room, he's playing video games. Like, Dad, shh, Dad, please. Okay, and then I'll listen, believe me, to see what's going on. But then later, I'll be in the kitchen, and he'll come in and go, Dad, can you come back in and say hi to my friends? It's like I'm
That's cool.
between dad's a big or nothing. Nothing between.
I love hear you say that, that it's an opportunity to parent, to say, I mean, could you imagine, this was, so many years ago, would you allow back then your 13, 14-year-old daughter to get into a stranger's car, a decade ago when Uber was not around? I mean, it's technology,
Oh,
we
I would
can't stop it, but like you said, having conversations with our kids. I mean, I have a 11-year-old granddaughter and she's amazing, but again, there's trust, we
yeah,
talk every day and so yeah, it's an interesting dilemma. Hey Tom,
daughter.
finally, because you really get people. What is your pet peeve?
Yeah.
What's the one thing that gets on your
And,
nerves?
and let me finish. Did you say you're a grandmother?
Yes.
Oh, yours. You are a smoking hot grandmother. That gives me hope. That gives.
I'll take it. I'll
I'll.
take it.
Yeah, I think. You know, the the stuff about, because there is, you can't uh, you can't dwell on what could be the worst case scenario,
Yeah.
because otherwise you get so tight. Now, my kids and I live in a house that's basically a bunker. There's 21 cameras inside, outside the house, and you know, but that's not for. I think I'm going to get a home invasion or whatever. It's for their mom, because you got to edit together these videos. But I certainly don't want my kids. I never. I like to have play dates here and sleepovers. I've gotten to know some parents that I trust and respect, and you do this thing, but you're always, uh, I'm not a person that would put my kids with a true stranger. I'd always have to be talk to the mom or the dad or whatever. I got to get, because it's a weird thing. I said to you, put all your jewelry, the deed to your house, everything valuable, put it in that car with that stranger, and they're going to drive off. You go, I will not do that. That would never. But if you say, what's the most important thing in the world to you? Your kids.
Yeah.
But a lot of parents will just put them everything that
I
means
know.
anything, and they drive off. I remember once when my ex and I were trying to live together. This about six, that doing that thing. You live on one side of the house, I'll live on one. We'll sell the house. Everything will be cool. I went to the door when I heard the bell went downstairs, and there was a guy from Craigslist. He goes, I'm Mark from Craigslist. I go, yeah. He goes, I'm supposed to take the kids to the park. And then she was upstairs and hired a
What?
guy from Craigslist. And it really stunned me. I'm like, Mark, this is your lucky day. You're going to get paid, but you also don't have to take my kids to the park. So, you're a little, and when you meet people that you trust with your kids, they're,
Yeah.
you keep them. You go, what's the group? And I got a couple of women that are just very excellent, and have always been with us, for years, and they're just excellent. One helps cleans the house. One's my assistant, who's young and fun, and then the woman that cleans the house is younger than me, of course, but she's a great mother. She speaks no English. I never. My kids can talk to her, and I don't think she may speak English, but not to me. But there's nothing. This relationship I have with her, like she thinks ahead. She knows where everything is. She does everything. She'll think what's best for the kids and get. So those are two great relationships, and you do have to think about things differently. Now, pet peeves. Pet peeves. I try to um, there's something that bugs me. There's WhatsApp. WhatsApp, that app
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
try. It's the first of the year. All the moms from each grade get on, and some dads, and
Okay.
the information just starts. And there's a lot of messages. There'll be 100 people on these things, and then something happens where somebody gets triggered and against the school. They become like a lynch mob against
Oh
one
God.
teacher or one. They want to fire them, and they're going to go down and demand this and that. It makes me very. I mean, it could change like that. And I will say, I will read what they're doing, and once in a while I go, listen, if you guys do that, no good teacher will ever come to our school,
Mm,
because they'll
mm.
go, that's school with the crazy parents. And I always tell, if you don't like, first of all, you can pull your kids out anytime.
Yeah.
But B, are you down there volunteering I volunteer a lot, because how could I complain about somebody if I'm not
Yeah.
sitting there?
Good point.
And, so those are, pet peeves. Pet peeve myself. I, it's hard for me to get motivated and I work out every day. It's very important. 2 years ago, I had a mini stroke, and
Mm.
then I lost pounds. But just by focusing, and up to that point, I kind of had blamed my kids. During COVID, I gained a shit ton of weight. I had a beard because that kind of, sweatpants to the face is what men call it. And no woman, I haven't had a date in 7 years. No woman has seen me with my shirt off. My kids have. And what that the pressure is not. But I had this little bitty stroke while I was giving him a bath, and then I got started diligently working out. And I tell him, I need an hour a day, guys. I need to do this cardio right here. And every other time I get on the elliptical and I had the headphones, just get them on, start going. All of a sudden they'd appear right here, arguing. He's doing this. She's doing this. Please, guys. But
Right.
at that, uh, uh, my son, I remember once my daughter came out, and he's like, "Quinn, Daddy needs his mental health time," or whatever he said. It was very funny to hear from him. But I can easily go, okay, I'm going to work out this time. Oh no, we got something going on over here. I'm going to wait till, I wish I had a little more time discipline. But there is something I have worked on. I'm not, today I was a little late, but I had a good reason. But I don't like being late. I like being a little early, because of the anxiety, getting things set up. I used to go out everything like last second. I can do all this stuff. But what I do now, I take a beat before any decision. I do that with the kids, because kids will get you rushing
Yeah.
around, and I just take a beat. And I don't have a lot of uh, pet peeves. My next door neighbor here, our next door neighbor, the kids, like people either love me and the kids, or they hate them. Because kids are very active. My kids are out. We're louder than most people. My son puts up 24 Christmas trees. We're Jewish, but he puts up 24 Christmas trees in the front yard. Some people are going to say, "Oh, that's very cute," and other people. But the next door neighbor lady, she's and I am obsessed with her because because she doesn't like me so much. It does remind me of a lot of relationships. But she wrote me a text one day and said, um, "Yeah, could you when you're working out, could you little breathe less, or you're I can hear you."
Breathe less.
So, so and when I'm on, she's an attorney, it turns out, and she said when I'm on my team meeting or conference, whatever she's on, I can still hear you there, and people are asking me questions. And so I wrote, "Well, tell them it's Tom Arnold. That's a hilarious story. The guy grunting next door is Tom Arnold." And so we went back and forth, and she's like, being condescending. I go, "Okay, I'm being condescending," but it's so from that point. First of all, I said to her, "Listen, the kids and I have lived here 2 years, a lot
Yeah.
longer than you have." Oh, and the other neighbors don't complain. She said, they don't complain because, but they do complain, just not to you. And also, I've lived here for 10 years. Like I had no idea she was right there. I didn't know she was. So, anytime she comes out of the house, you know, like, it's just a very, just that hatred or that disdain, that she has. It keeps me alive. All the other people that love kids, they really watch out for my kids here. But it's fascinating that a person would be that wound up about my breathing and my grunts and groans. I do try to keep them down. I try not to do it
Stop
too much, but I think it's
stop
a theme with
breathing.
women
Wow.
want me to stop. That's what it is. So you know, pe- people that get bugged by kids, people get bugged by babies on the plane is uh, it bugs me. People that treat the flight attendants, flight with disrespect, or waiters, or whatever. This world, because after COVID, there's a lot of people that just lost their sense of decency, and they scream and they do this stuff, and that's you know that's not okay. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. And all you can do is control what you contribute into this world and how you act,
that's all.
because even what you're describing with your neighbor, and I had to learn it myself as well, is it had nothing to do with you. And
Yeah.
again, like I said earlier, it's expecting that people and circumstances will be in a certain way that you want them to be. And if they're not, you get triggered. So, but in a scheme of everything you've been through, this sounds, just like nothing. Um,
Well, it's abuse.
Tom,
It's abuse. When I get criticized on the internet, the trolls, people say really nice things, and I'm like, I appreciate that, I do. But once in a while, these trolls, I just have to engage with them. It is so funny, and just really engage. What I found too is when there's somebody that's trolling you and saying negative stuff. I wanted to have a show called "Say It to My Face," where somebody trolled you. Let's say they worked at McDonald's. You go there, you show up
yeah,
in the line. "Hey, did you say this to my face?" Now, the problem with that is, you're different worlds. Number one, you can't. It's not like a fair fight. But two,
yeah,
what I found by finding these people, doing a little, I forget what they call it, where you get their address, their phone number. Anyway, I think it's probably illegal. Is that when I have been in a position to talk to them, they've always been like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I'm such a big fan. I just wanted you to communicate with me." And so I
mm,
realized I'm never doing that again, because
yeah,
that made me feel bad about myself. So, I try to. It's funny to be trolled, but but another thing I do when I go to because I have kids, we'll
yeah,
go to the store, I'll get the cart, put stuff in the back, and I always put the cart back in the cart corral. And for the kids, like, "We got to go." I go, "No, no, you got to do this." And I walk over, and it's a
that's
pain in the
cool.
butt. It's a pain in the
Yeah,
butt, but do it. And I think maybe they'll remember this. So it's making me a better person. I'm like, why do I have to do this? Oh, I'll do it. So little things
yeah,
like that. I think if you do it enough,
big
kids go,
things.
"Oh, that's what to do." Yeah.
Yeah, look, they add up, Tom. I mean, what you said about the trolls, I hear that sometimes too. I think sometimes people they when they deploy these comments, again, it's they have stuff going on in their lives, and it's you got to deploy compassion. And there's probably not a
Right.
lot going on, and I always say to myself, they're probably not loved enough, in their lives, and so you just have to move past that. But the small things like moving that cart, even if it's like, if it's cold outside, and just the small things kids do notice. That's really cool. Even how you interact with the wait staff in a restaurant and saying thank you, and yeah, it shouldn't disappear. So listen, you and I we can talk. Like, this is I didn't know you from Adam, otherwise from, from the shows, but that's very different. Never met you before, but I feel like I've known you for a long time. So this has been really enjoyable, and I want to thank you, for agreeing to come on a show and sharing yourself with us.
Thank you very much. Wish you the best of luck. You got a good operation there too, like very professional. I was surprised, to
Thank
be
you.
honest with you. You got guys there and
Oh, thank you.
whatever.
No,
Well, thank
I
you very much.
appreciate it. Thank you very much, and yeah, and to our viewers, don't forget to subscribe to our Beyond the Bar podcast. Follow us on all social media platforms, and make sure you join us again. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.